Hello and welcome to the Fund Operator podcast. I'm Maya Sibul, a reporter at fundoperator.com. And today I am joined by Sally Bridgeland to discuss the duration gap between ESG considerations and the investment cycle and how to rectify it. And the duration gap refers to the mismatch between ESG objectives that take decades to unfold and financial markets that have a much shorter life cycle. While the issues around embedding ESG into the marketplace are multifaceted, this topic is critical as it hits on the significance of a long-term mindset needed to achieve ESG investment goals. And Sally has previously discussed this fundamental issue at ClearPath Analysis' Autumn ESG Investment Leader event in London last year, 2022. And it's a difficulty she has said that the industry is likely to struggle with for some time. So without further ado, it's really lovely to have you on the podcast, Sally. I'm very excited to discuss this important topic with you.
Delighted to be here.
And just a brief bio on Sally. So she is a leading figure in the pensions industry. She's the chair of Impact's Asset Management Group, as well as a non-executive director and committee chairman at Royal London, and a non-executive director at Pension Insurance Corporation and RSA. However, she is probably best known for her work with local pensions partnership as the non-executive director and chair of its investment. And to add to her list of credits, we're excited to announce that Sally will also be a judge at ClearPath Analysis' inaugural ESG Investment Leader Awards, upcoming in November 2023, so later this year. And today, again, as we mentioned, she'll just be speaking about the duration gap between ESG considerations and the investment cycle, how it can best be addressed and mitigated, and what she's hoping to see for the awards when she does judge them. So Sally, we will just dive straight in. It's a big topic and can't wait to get started. We'll start off with an easy question. The first one is just, can you discuss your current roles, what your organizational remit is, and your background?
Certainly, yes. So most of my roles at the moment are non-executive, which means that you're very much looking down at the organization, taking that sort of top-level helicopter view and thinking longer term, longer time frame. Yeah. That tends to be the way that boards and non-executives work. And both with Impact's Asset Management and local pensions partnership investments, we're really leading and specializing on the transition to a sustainable economy or thinking hard about responsible investment. And we're also finding at Royal London, at PIC and RSA, there are different dimensions of the environmental, social and governance dimensions that actually are important and that are becoming more thematic in the way that we're talking about our purpose and what we do. Yeah. So we're actually seeing at the business level how that plays out, as well as at the investor level. My background is I'm an actuary. I was a pension fund consultant for 20 years with the organisation that's now Aon, but was also responsible for innovating and in 2003 did a competition with the FT on long-term responsible investment. So for 20 years I've been banging on about ESG and having the need to have a longer time frame.
It's great to hear because it's really something that, there is evidence that you have cared about for a very long time and have sort of a proven track record of really trying to get people more on board here, which is wonderful to see. And one of these things is that you presented, as we mentioned, at our ESG event last year, discussing the duration gap, as mentioned. And I guess my next question is just, what are your top 3 most pressing concerns in this area? Where most critically can investors improve?
Yeah, so I think the challenge is that most businesses have got into the habit of having an annual planning cycle and thinking about their finances and maybe a 3 to 5 year strategic cycle. Whereas, as you said in the introduction, if we're thinking about 2030, 2040, 2050, the climate objectives that they might have and plans are much longer than that. So there's a real difference between the short term and the long term ways of thinking that are available. And we're very good at planning for the short term. Yeah. We're very good at running the business so that I describe it as avoiding doing the bad stuff, having the right metrics in place to monitor what we're doing and make sure that we don't do the bad stuff. Whereas climate change and these longer term objectives around, affecting climate change and transition to a sustainable economy are much more about doing the good stuff, which needs a much more integrated, more complex, system-wide look at things. So I think the three things, the pressing concerns that we have is, I think we're overworking the maths and the metrics, and this is me as a mathematician criticizing other people for relying too much on the numbers rather than that longer term thinking. That we are thinking short term, we're trying to work out what's the target I need to do this year, and assuming that the long term is a series of short terms. In a way it is, in a way it isn't. If we make good progress this year, we shouldn't slack off next year. We need to kind of keep going. And the third one is something around a lack of imagination, and being able to imagine not only the good things that businesses can be doing, but also where things might go wrong and how we might have to compensate for that in our actions over the longer time frame.
It's interesting because, the lack of imagination actually was something that someone said to me for the first time on a call I was having the other day, and I thought it was an interesting way of framing it and rang true to me when we were talking about it. At least, short-termism is always sort of, it's often criticized. It actually seems to be at odds with traditional investing logic, investing for the long term and needing to have a fiduciary responsibility. But how do you feel that this argument changes when ESG considerations are involved, the sort of criticism of short-termism in investing in general?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the criticism around short-termism has appeared over the time that I've been in the industry. It kind of came in when it became more of a competitive than an absolute game. So as soon as you're measuring a manager against another manager, an investment manager, or against a benchmark, you've got a short-term way of looking at things. That started off with peer group benchmarks that you'd look at once a quarter. And we're now at the point where we can look at a benchmark every day if we've got daily priced funds. That encourages, to a certain extent, a short-term focus. And it reflects what I call chess club versus drama club. So chess club is, it's all about the maths and the metrics, and this is how we build things going forward. The drama club is more about what's the plot here? What's the big story? What characters? What do we need to put together to make sure there's a happy ending? And how do the different chapters play out?
If you're focused overly on the numbers, the planning, the step-by-step approach to going forward in time, you can fail to appreciate that longer time frame, bigger picture story.
We introduced weekly reporting on investment, the investment performance to our board. And if anything, I think that helped people realize just how up and down things go between those quarterly observations, and made them a bit more relaxed about, well, it's not just about this quarter, because next week we might have a good week, or the next fortnight we might have a good fortnight. There will be something around data overload that will just make you want to say, okay, what's the story here? Give me the bigger picture that will help actually find that story for the ESG and how that might progress over the longer term. But I'm an optimist. It could mean that everybody gets focused on a particular metric that they love and that they're really interested in. And you end up with terrible conflicts between people because somebody's looking at this and somebody's looking at that, and different things matter to them, even around a board. And that might make it difficult to reconcile that, and more arguments about the data and the integrity of the data and how important it is.
I guess if the fundamental question is just how can asset managers and asset owners bridge this gap or work to bridge this gap, especially considering local and geopolitical pressures, which of course we've seen a lot of lately, which could test the mettle of these strategies. What would you say about that, and how does sort of the larger macro picture, how does that impact things?
So I think there's always going to be a certain amount of noise in the system even over a 5-year period. If you're thinking about the 10, 15-year time horizon, then having the stories for how how the world might navigate those pressures, including the geopolitical tensions, which can be very destructive. They can be potentially very constructive. What roles will the different countries play in this path, and therefore what do we need to do to make sure we're doing the bit that we can contribute to positive change. So having a consistent view of actually what will the world look like when we get there, that some people refer to this as the Horizon 3, then help you decide what are the Horizon 2 kind of innovations and actions that you need to take to move us away from that path. And in climate investing, that's sometimes talked about as a sort of a transition pathway or a belief around the investment pathway that you need to take. Now, you may have strong views about this, or you may not. You hope that your investment manager, your active investment manager, will have their strong views about that. And by talking about those stories, again, it's more drama club than chess club, can then work back to, so what are the things that are as important that we measure? Or are we not actually convinced by that point of view, and we need to diversify with a manager who's using another point of view, or have some risk mitigation in other kinds of investments? Those are the kinds of conversations which I think are helpful in cutting out the noise. In the fact that there will still be a world, whether it's a war, whether there are political disagreements, whether there's a change in political colour, actually the environment, society, and how it all fits together will still exist, and we need to find a way to work through that in a sustainable way.
It's interesting what you're saying about the sort of long-term belief. Do you feel that the industry, there's confluence around understanding the bigger picture at the moment, or are people getting lost in the weeds and sort of, blinded by the minutiae, as it were?
I think, it is making the meal out of the maths and enjoying the chess game without thinking about, well, we're going to come to the end of the chessboard. There is so much uncertainty out there that we have to create certainty by developing a story and all working towards it, or having different stories going that will diversify and mean that we can come to some kind of resolution. But just avoiding doing the bad stuff won't get us there. We've got to think more constructively about what the good stuff is and take action to invest in that and invest in that future.
I mean, to take it more towards, the pensions angle, which of course is most relevant to you, this issue is especially prescient for pension funds, sort of as they reach the end of their journey plans. How do you think that this problem can be really taken on and addressed for pension funds going forward?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, because I don't subscribe to the view that acting in the best interest of your beneficiaries says, well, once we come to the end of our de-risking and buy it out, that we're not responsible for that anymore. I do think that pension fund trustees do need to anticipate that, and that it's an important criteria for, if you're securing your pension fund benefits with an insurance company, that the insurance company is also aligned to the kinds of objectives that you would have for the long term.
Right.
But there are two challenges. One is time frame. One is of actually you as a group of people, as trustees, are responsible for getting it to that point of transaction at which money changes hands and benefits are secured. And so that's one thing. There's a kind of governance and a agency kind of risk. There are different people involved in different parts of the process. And there are regulatory barriers. So because Solvency II for insurance companies is different than the way that the pension fund regulator has requirements on UK pension funds, it is more difficult for insurance companies to carry on using particularly illiquid investments that have the right kind of objectives and might be part of the solutions for the future, the good stuff, the infrastructure, the private equity, the kinds of things that are important ingredients in making this transition. It's more challenging for insurance companies to have those. Now, whether the government and we managed to get a new version of Solvency II, Solvency UK, as part of the Brexit dividend that helps us along on that journey, that's what I'd like for Christmas.
Yeah. Is there anything that you are particularly, just to elaborate on that, is there anything you're particularly nervous about regarding Solvency II actually firming up? Or I know what would be sort of the best case scenario, but what are you nervous about?
I suppose I'm nervous about the missed opportunities. I think there are huge opportunities, and it's coming through also in the pension fund pooling and how you use illiquid investments in defined contribution pensions. These are all common themes. This country needs a significant amount of investment to improve growth.
Yeah.
And there is a pool of institutional capital that could help be deployed to help improve that growth. There are a lot of little barriers, whether it's accounting standards or regulatory requirements, that get in the way of that, get in the way of doing the right thing. And again, it feels a bit chess club rather than drama club. The failure to see across those silos, across the different squares on the board, and take the opportunity for that bigger picture thinking.
Interesting. This is something I'm eager to discuss more in the future, but to shift focus right now, just to one question about the ESG awards, which you will be judging later this year. With the third-party asset management category, can you give us a few words on what you might be looking for when you are judging?
I think what I'm going to be looking for when I'm judging is that imagination, that story, that clarity around what is the view of the world and how the institutional investor and that asset manager can contribute to that. That is the most important thing to me. Yes, metrics, reporting, and client service is going to be important too. It always is. But understanding that investment thesis and philosophy is key.
Yeah, having a coherent, big picture understanding of why.
Absolutely.
This is wonderful. I mean, these have been fantastic answers, and it's been so lovely to talk to you, Sally. Of course, there's more we could go into, but right now I just want to thank you so much for spending the time with me this morning and sharing your thoughts. And a quick message to anyone who is listening, which is that if you are interested in learning more about the ESG Investment Leader Awards, which will be held this November in London, you can visit the event page at awards.esginvestmentleader.com, and submissions are accepted until the end of May, so the deadline's coming up. Don't forget to get your submissions in. Sally will be judging. And again, if you would like to appear on the podcast, please just email me at Maya, M-A-Y-A, Sibul, S-I-B-U-L, at clearpathanalysis.com, or you can get in contact with us on LinkedIn. And remember to visit fundoperator.com for more thoughts. And we also have weekly, daily updates on our LinkedIn page. And I will see you again soon. Again, thank you so much, Sally, and it was so wonderful to have you.
My pleasure.
Yeah.